All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It looks like we have some people filtering in. My name's Lauren. I'm the Assistant Director of the Career Enrichment Network here in the College of the Liberal Arts. And this is day 2 of Liberal Arts Career Week. So today we had a couple of different events. From noon to 1, we had our economics alumni panel. And right now, we are going to go into our English and CAS or Communication Arts and Sciences alumni panel. So we have an amazing lineup of some pretty spectacular alumni here today. So this is just a reminder that I want to encourage everyone in the audience to please ask questions. Dr. Sean Gowdy will be moderating the panel and I will be monitoring the Q&A as we go through. And this is going to be recorded and then posted on our YouTube channel afterward. So if you want to refer back, you can always look there. But with that, I will stop my screen share and then turn it over to Sean.
Thank you, Lauren. And thanks everyone to the Career Enrichment Network for sponsoring this wonderful panel during Global Arts Career Week. It's an honor to be moderating this panel, this session. All of you who are attending, I think you're going to be blown away by the women on this panel. They are just so impressive in so many ways. And so I think you're going to want to hear more from them than me. So without further ado, I'll introduce the 3 panelists for today, and then we'll start the question and answer. And I'll probably kick things off, and then we welcome you, as Lauren said, to submit any questions or comments you have to the Q&A button or the chat stream. And before I introduce our panelists, again, thank you for taking time out of your day to attend today's session. And I'm really confident that you'll take something away from today that'll be helpful to you. So our first panelist is Sammy Allen. Sammy's a 2015 graduate of Global Arts and Communications programs at Penn State. She earned a double degree in English and journalism. And since graduating, she's moved to New York City and she started a career at Oprah magazine. And since then, she's worked at startups and bigger companies. She's written about travel, food, wellness, home improvement, and finally made her way out in 2020 to, of all places, Colorado. She doesn't ski, she reports. And so, yes, she feels like a bit of an imposter living out in Colorado, in Denver specifically. But she's managing editor of Forbes Home, in Forbes Marketplace premier home improvement and design website. It's fabulous. I hadn't actually visited it before the session today, but did, and is like, wow, really impressive site. So welcome, Sammy. Our second panelist today is Casey Bigger, who's a 2010 graduate of Penn State, and she had a dual degree in English and CAS. Her current role is as Senior Customer Success Manager for Box. And she leverages her strong communication and relationship building skills with large Fortune 500 enterprises to cultivate trust, accelerate strategic business transformations, and achieve valuable results. Casey has been recognized for ability to overcome challenges and consistently exceed expectations to make both customers and peers widely successful, widely successful. She currently lives outside of Pittsburgh and enjoys networking, reading, hiking, and traveling in her spare time. Welcome, Casey. And our third panelist is Whitney Stringer. Whitney is a top communications strategist and has been named an unconventional PR powerhouse. From creating communications plans to developing influencer marketing campaigns to serving as a brand spokesperson, Whitney has been tapped to work with names like Hilton Hotels, Macy's, the National Cherry Blossom Festival, the U.S. Census Bureau, Amtrak, and Google's Global Social Impact Team. 2023 marks the 11th anniversary for Whitney Stringer PR and Events, her namesake boutique firm, which is known for helping brands, both big and small, to shape their public image, hone messaging, and increase community relations. Years before this, her roots were painted blue and white as she studied communication arts and sciences at Penn State. From there, she went on to her first, this is fun, we gotta hear more about this, her first full-time role with Oscar Mayer Foods in the highly coveted role as a hot dogger for their famed Wienermobile. Woo. Today, she continues to serve her beloved Nittany Nation as the Vice President of the Penn State Professional Women's Network of DC, and she's a proud resident of the city and frequently volunteers with initiatives to support new entrepreneurs around the district and beyond. Welcome, Whitney. So my first question for, I guess I'll pose it to three of you, is kind of a two-part question. I guess, can you briefly explain a little bit about what you do in your current position to our attendees? And is there a particular skill that you took away from your liberal arts major that's been valuable in your career, in your current position or all along the way? So something about a little précis, if you would, of what you do in your current job now, and then a particular skill or a set of skills that you took away from your major that seem to have worked or been valuable to you. I guess we can start in the order I introduced you, maybe Sammy, and then Casey and Whitney.
Hi, guys. So I am the managing editor of Forbes Home. So I work under Forbes Marketplace. We're not fully under Forbes. We're kind of like an arm of Forbes. So I started and there was no website. And so I built up the freelancer base and got some staff, got a content creator, content calendar going. And from there, it's just really been 2 years of building up an entire website from scratch. So it's really exciting. I do a lot of editing. I do a lot of managing. I think definitely managing is more my role at this point. So I think the other part of the question was what English or liberal arts skill helps me in my career. And I definitely think it's like just the human aspect of it. I think when you go through this program, you are challenged to really understand different perspectives and learn a worldview. And that's really important in my line of work as a journalist, but also in managing my team. So I think those skills have really helped me develop not only in my content creation, but also in my management skills.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sammy. How about you, Casey? What do you do? Tell us a day in the life for Casey, and any particular skill that you took away from your degree that's been valuable to you?
Everybody, Casey Bigger. I'm a senior customer success manager at Box. Customer success is relatively new. It actually got started right about when I graduated. So I got to kind of grow up in the field, see, different takes on it, different perspectives. Basically, I'm charged with making sure that important companies, in this case, Box, that their customer base is happy, healthy, and receiving value. So that means strategic business reviews, working on business goals and outcomes, success metrics and tracking, and really being the master of none, right? I don't control any of the other people or groups or manage them that have to come together to make this happen, but I'm responsible for driving that force. So it's a lot of communication. Kind of to Sammy's point, I think what I took away from Penn State, especially as I have a minor in rhetoric, the art of persuasive speaking. And so spend a lot of my days persuading others to do the things that we need to do, adjust their competing priorities and really focus on that. So I think that, coupled with just effective communication for different audiences, helps me keep things going and keep my clients on track.
Thank you, Casey. And how about you, Whitney? What's a day in the life for Whitney like? A skill that you took away? If you can work in the Wienermobile, so much the better. Yeah.
Sure thing. Yeah, so thank you for that introduction. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you all dedicating this space and time for our worthy students behind us to be able to get a peek into what some alumni get to do. So thank you so much for having me. Yeah, so as the owner of Whitney Stringer PR and Events, the focus of the work that my firm does is essentially helping to raise visibility to organizations, groups, people that deserve it. So I get a chance to work from everything from, like you mentioned, from hotels, fitness studio owners, large corporations, government offices and whatnot, and working on campaigns and projects that I really find are deserving myself and then help to raise their visibility. So I'm working with great magazine editors and teams like Sammy was talking about, and doing special events and doing all these special initiatives to help organizations get to the people that would be of value to them. And in terms of what I was thinking about, of what I took from it, it's a lot of what Sammy and Casey already said, like the art of persuasion. I remember specifically talking about and studying persuasion, and I use that so much in my day-to-day. But even furthermore, I would say that my time at Penn State, I was really, while my concentration was in liberal arts, I also studied at a number of other schools. Also, I took classes here and there in business. I studied abroad, and being able to have, as Sammy was saying, that perspective, that world perspective, and a little bit of this, a little bit of that, like having a well-rounded knowledge has really been the most useful tool that I gained from my Penn State experience as a whole.
That's great. I mean, that's a good segue, Whitney, into the question I was going to ask you all next, which was beyond your major, the Career Enrichment Network, for example, for some of you, it didn't even exist when you were here, or it was in its early years. And it's just this amazing resource for liberal arts folks like those in attendance today. But when I talk to alums, and I get every year, it's my privilege, honestly, to be able to do that in a bunch of different forums. I teach a class, for example, where alumni come back every fall and they answer that age-old question, like, what the hell are you going to do with English major to English majors or potential English majors? And I'm always amazed at like the different kinds of resources that folks took advantage of when they were here at Penn State, that were really, really helpful to them, useful to them, and spurred them on. And Whitney, you just talked a little bit about taking classes in other areas that may not even be your major, but clubs, activities, things that folks, the resources that are available in Penn State. How about for each of you, is there a particular resource at the university that was valuable to you and helpful to you as you began to shape and form your career?
I'll continue a little bit more of what I was speaking about in my last answer. So again, studying abroad, I did a semester at the University of Salamanca in Spain. And by far, that was the best enriching experience that I had. And furthermore, I actually started at a smaller school. I grew up in central Pennsylvania. I grew up in State College, and everyone was going to Penn State. So I was like, not into it. I was like, no, I don't want to go. Everyone else is going. And then I went somewhere else and I was like, all right, I want to go back to Penn State. So I came back. But at the other school that I went to, I knew I was interested in furthering my Spanish education. And I remember going to the study abroad office, and they had a program that they were suggesting for me. And they were saying like, well, you're going to be the first one and probably the only one in the program, but you can do it and let us know how it goes. I was not really particularly interested in being in that situation. So the contrast of being at Penn State and having so many options to do an international study, whether it was, a full year, a half year, just a 6-month immersion program or whatnot. I think that's by far, whenever I talk to students, I always suggest for them to look into studying abroad.
I completely agree. I was going to say, I studied abroad in London between my sophomore and junior year. And it was just a summer, but the program itself was super cool because 3 of the credits was toward like an internship, and then 3 credits was toward a class. So you got to do both. And that really opened me like to everything. Like my first internship there in London was actually like a restaurant review website, which was so much cooler than it even sounds. I felt completely unworthy of being there. And also I was 19 and I had like no idea what to eat. So it really taught me everything. And I came back just with this like very strong constitution that no matter what I did, I needed to have that worldview. And it also set me off in the world of like food writing and lifestyle writing. So without that experience, I don't know where I would be. I think internships are so crucial for these colleges, especially.
And I think a little separate perspective or experience for me, I held several jobs while I was in school. I didn't unfortunately have the ability to travel abroad. And so around 2010, there was the early shapings or maybe mid shapings of the Career Network as it stands today. And they were able to do 3 wonderful things for me. Firstly, they did connect me with an internship opportunity in State College. I got to work for the Artisan Connection, write biographies on local artists, work at the store, get to understand how some of the local community information was communicated out. Also, I was able to leverage both the career services for mock interviews. So I got to come in, have it be recorded, see myself live, gain that confidence, and know that, I was going to go in and present my best foot forward. And then 3, my first job out of school, which I'm sure we'll get to later, I actually secured through the job boards at Penn State. I graduated, came home, and started my job immediately. And I attribute those 3 things to that fast of a successful process.
Fantastic. Thank you all for that. So what do you like most about your job? What do you like least about your job? And I guess the third piece of this is, what's an entry-level position in your field look like? So what do you like most about your job? What do you like least about your job? And what's an entry-level job look like in your field? Anyone, you can start that.
Yeah, I'm pretty passionate on this one because I would say my path wasn't maybe the most typical. Sean, I totally loved that course in 2010. What do you do with a BA in English? I loved hearing different folks come in, from an attorney general to publisher at McGraw-Hill, and speak about what is the art of the possible, because I knew teaching wasn't it for me, but I wasn't sure what it was that I wanted to do. So for me, my humble beginnings began in customer service, using the art of communication, building relationships and trust. And I did that within the real estate appraisal management space before figuring out what do I want to do with my BA in English and switching over to technology. And so really that's where I found my passion. I love troubleshooting, problem solving. And so for my job today, I get to hold customers' hands through meaningful business transformations that impact not only their bottom line, but depending on the business, communities, different businesses and people out in society. So I find that really rewarding. And I get to build personal relationships. There's always that personal element to it. I would say the hardest challenge you'll hear in the business world, maybe in other worlds, herding cats. That's what I spend a lot of my time doing. It's, again, master of all but none, where you need to wrangle a group of people, maybe in different businesses and organizations, maybe multiple different parties, to work together for that common good. And so some of that can be frustrating, but I do try to pivot with that and take learning experiences in that, we all communicate differently. We all prefer different types of communication. So when I find something's not working, it's an opportunity to figure out what might.
Thanks, Casey. How about you, Whitney, Sammy? Something you especially like about what you do, something maybe not so much, and we'll leave it there.
Yeah, sure, I'll jump in. So as you said in my introduction, this is the 11th year that I've had my firm Whitney Stringer PR and Events, which means I'm the boss. So I like being able to decide what kind of projects I'm going to work on, who I'm going to work with. A number of years ago, I identified what was important to me was really working with brands that were brands or organizations that were led by women and people of color and other underrepresented groups. So that's where I focus my business on. That's the majority of who I work with, and or other organizations that are aligned with causes that are important to me. So I really like being able to have that that decision making, as opposed to when I was working for somebody else and it was whatever project came along, then I had to work on that. So I like being able to be in that decision making chair. And then on the downside of it, also being the boss, because when something goes wrong, everyone's looking at me too. So there's, the benefits and the downside of being the one who is the namesake on the door at the end of the day. But both of those are important in thinking about, being an entrepreneur particularly.
Yeah, Whitney, I feel like I'm kind of opposite your shoes, where I love being able to help the people that I manage get better as editors and writers. And I also love being able to connect with all these freelancers who are experts in their own right about all things home and beyond. I connect with so many people and they give me so many great tips. I feel like I'm getting smarter every single day just being an editor. On the other hand, there is this part of me that's I just want to work for myself. I just want to know that everything I'm doing is I'm building something myself. And I think everyone kind of has that thought at some point in their career, like, can I go off and do my own thing? So I'm kind of in this place where I'm wondering that and wondering like how I could take my skills and create something that's just my own. So I guess the other question being, what's an entry-level job in my role? So it would probably be like a web assistant, a web editor, an assistant editor. I think anyone right out of school could easily be like an editorial assistant. I think a lot of people are coming out of college these days with like multiple internships, as well as lots of other experience that actually adds and would make them potentially a good fit for an assistant editor position. So anything in that realm, but I mean, I feel like it's honestly endless. Anyone who wants to step out into the media world, you can truly start anywhere.
And it looks like we had
We got two great questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, Lauren. You notice, I actually think these two questions are complementary. And so thank you. And everybody, you can continue to submit questions in the Q&A. So Catherine Ackerman asked a question about how best to apply for interviews. Her question specifically, and she lets us know, Sammy, and all, that she did the same London abroad experience. And she had an internship in a class and so on last summer. And she's now in the process of trying to find an internship for the upcoming summer. And her majors are criminology and English with a minor in journalism. And she's trying to get into journalism, editing, publishing world. And she's wondering if the panel has any suggestions about where she should look and how she should go about the process of applying for internships in those areas: journalism, editing, publishing, and interviewing. And then Avery Heverly's question is about how do you even begin to look for a first position after you graduate? And what was your first position? How'd you find it? So you can answer one or both of those questions about how to seek out and apply for an internship, or how to seek out and apply for your first job, and what was it in each of your cases. Anyone want to start?
I can start. So my best resource at first, honestly, was LinkedIn. Like, I know that it's kind of a weird platform for college students to be on at first, but it does have a lot of internship opportunities on there, as well as like if you've already had an internship experience, you should connect with those people and stay in touch with them. Actually, my internship coordinator when I was in London, he was the same person that I ended up connecting with when I moved to New York, and I ended up doing a bunch of restaurant reviews for him as like a side hustle. So it's always nice to keep those connections. The other thing is definitely like utilize every single internship or career enrichment network here. I connected with so many people when I was just looking for internships that I was able to keep those same connections when looking for a job. And I know that Whitney might have a similar experience having done an internship. I was lucky enough that the people I did an internship with, which happened to be Oprah Magazine, I was very lucky, and they had an opening right when I was about to graduate. So I do credit a lot of what I've been able to do with the connections I made early on, even as like a teenager. Like literally, they managed to stay strong all these years.
I think I can speak a little bit about finding your first job, and I'm sure Whitney has much to say on this topic as well, but a lot of it's about building your personal brand and starting that as soon as you possibly can, whether that's through internships and connections. LinkedIn has this great feature where you can request recommendations and feedback if you're hired or you do work with any type of community organizations or nonprofits. It's a great place to showcase things like that. LinkedIn has become basically the norm. I can just tell you, most people, as soon as they meet you in a professional setting, they're going to go see if you have a LinkedIn, see more about you. It's a great place to just start building that history. And it's definitely intimidating when you first start out, because you're like, what am I even going to put on here? But with a little bit of thought, a little bit of effort, you can start creating that brand and building out your experience. And so for me, with, again, first job, I knew that I wanted to be customer facing, working with customers in some capacity. So it was customer service, and then to pivot into managing customers in a technical space, there was also some time in a technical support facing role as well. So it's kind of that staying in the thread of customer engagement, and then finding the avenue that you want to pursue from there.
Yeah, I think those are all really great tips. I would say one of the biggest things I think has helped me in every stage of my career is just talking about what I wanted to do. So, whether it's to your neighbor, or your parents' friends, or your other classmates or whatnot, like once you have an idea of what you want to do, be talking about it, because the more you're talking about it, the more you're thinking about it, then people can think along with you. Like a lot of times I remember being in school and people would talk about like, you have to go network, and it just seemed so like daunting, the idea of like, what does it mean? Like I have to go to these weird events and like say the right things, like as opposed to thinking about it necessarily that way, just who you're already talking to, talk about what you want to do. And I find that a lot of opportunities just come along because you talked about it, you were posting about it on social media, you were reading about it, and you commented on an article or whatever. Like you just need to show that you're engaged. A lot of times that can be a great first step. And in terms of me, my first job, as was mentioned in my bio in the introduction, was I drove the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. And so that actually opportunity came right on campus. As you all might be aware, it's Oscar Mayer's Hot Dogger program, which has now been around for about 35 years. And Penn State is one of the main universities with which they recruit. And so I was in Spanish class, and someone who I had studied abroad with said that she was going to a session they were having later that evening about driving the Wienermobile. And I had zero interest, but I had parents that would ask me every other day, what have you done to find a job? So I was like, whatever, I'll just go to this session so I can tell them that I'm trying. And so I went to the session, and I was listening to the description of like, you drive a 27-foot long hot dog around the country. Like, I don't know. And I don't even eat meat really. So I was like, no, like not into it. But I was really engaged in the session. I asked a lot of questions and they recognized that. And they said, well, can you please apply? This is when we had printed resumes. I had a printed resume at the bottom of my backpack. And I was like, I mean, if you want it, they're like, sure. And so I got a first round interview. Then the second round of interview was at their offices in Wisconsin. And actually one of the other women that was applying for the position, her older sister had done it years before. And so she gave me like tips to interview the next day, which included having to sing Oscar Mayer songs. So I practiced with her. She did not get offered the position, so you can take that however you want. But anyway, when I was offered the position, I took it, and even I had to use my art of persuasion to tell my parents that this was a good idea to drive the Wienermobile around the country, but it actually turned out to be an absolutely great experience. I got to see the country. I got to run basically my own marketing firm for a year on Oscar Mayer's dime. So that was, it was a great way to get started. But again, the opportunity came out of me just seeing an opportunity and being engaged, and someone recognizing how engaged I was and said, okay, we see something here. So sometimes just speaking up, raising your hand, paying attention can lead to the next best thing. And actually, I just was doing a quick scan, and if anybody's interested in considering the Oscar Mayer hot dogger position, they're taking applications until January 31st. So I'll put in the chat that application, and you're welcome to reach out to me to ask any questions. But if you're interested, you've got a little bit more time to apply.
Wow. I feel like I should drop the mic now. Once I knew we were going to get somewhere with the Wienermobile Oscar Mayer thing, and that I never imagined that it would be that productive, that fruitful. Whitney, what an amazing story. And yeah, oh my God, those are two great questions. How do you get your first job, and how do you really go about applying for internships? And all of you on this, I strongly encourage you to talk to Lauren and her team, Katie Wasaki, the Career Enrichment Network. I mean, these are the kind of resources that, again, they weren't always around, and these folks are so fantastic, and they can help steer you through their resources, both their digital resources, but their in-person resources, to internships that might be on point for you and how you go about applying for those. Likewise, many of your majors have internship coordinators within your departments, and I strongly encourage you to contact them. But what you're seeing here is my first job was teaching at Vanderbilt, and I taught there for 8 years, and I never met an alum in 8 years. I'm telling you the honest truth. I never met an alum in 8 years. And I'm one of 9 kids, and I like to meet people doing other stuff. Most of my siblings don't give a crap that I'm a professor in English. They all do other things, right? So I came here, and from like day one, I was meeting Penn State alumni every place. And I went to like football games and hockey games and things like that. And but these are resources, and Lauren and their team can help direct you to these folks, these brilliant, amazing folks who have stories like about how the Wienermobile led them to something. And I strongly encourage all of you here who are in attendance to take advantage of the Penn State Alumni Network. Some of the folks on here even work on chapters in their city. It's just, there's nothing like it. It's nothing like the giving back that Penn Staters give. It's so humbling to me to see this in practice. It's my heart, pal, to hear these stories and hear the folks giving back, but they're fantastic. So, all right, guys, this is a question when alums come to class. I always ask them to try and address this question, like, what's one thing, knowing what you know now, what's one thing you would have done differently if you were back at Penn State, knowing what you know now? Anything that you can think of. Would you have done anything differently? Go ahead, Casey, you're raring, you're ready to go.
I got 2 easy wins. Obviously with Sammy and Whitney here, I would have studied abroad. Was a dream of mine. London was totally on my radar. Would love to still get there someday, but yes, can't echo their statements enough that if you get a chance to travel and do so via the Methodist school, definitely do it. For me, also, networking, building a brand, doing that sooner. It's really easy to be intimidated and feel like you don't have enough to bring to the table right when you start out, but you do. Trust that you do. Start talking to people, networking with people, and again, networking in the definition of just having conversations, and build that out sooner. I think that would have helped me find my happy path in my home sooner rather than the time it took me to figure it out.
And applied for the Wienermobile, right, Casey? You missed
Yes,
that one.
Clearly, missed opportunity.
Whitney or Sam, anything you wish you'd done differently?
Yeah, I'll chime in. I'll say, I wish that I had made more of an effort to continue the friendships and relationships that I had with my colleagues with other students, while I was at school. And so, I mean, now there's so many tools to stay connected, but I'd really encourage, staying connected with your classmates, with who else is in your fraternities and sororities, and, who lives across the hall and whatnot, because that is your network. And so I think I kind of didn't really think of that when I was in school. I was always like, I need to speak to people who are in careers and what I'm going to, but your peers can also just as much be part of your network, and sometimes even more valuable. So I would encourage that. I'm also highly connected with the Penn State Alumni Association, which I totally recommend. Your first year out of school, you get free membership. And so I totally encourage everyone to utilize that. I didn't really get connected with the Alumni Association until a couple of years later, but it's been such valuable resources for me. So both my CAS alumni groups, but then the official Alumni Association has been really useful. So I would encourage that.
What I would do differently, this is a very different answer, but I think there are enough students like me that they'll hear this. I had like horrible imposter syndrome. Like, I really thought that every single time I got a good opportunity, I like somehow fooled people and I was like a fraud. And I think a lot of people experience this, and it's very real. And I think it's also because, like, look at the movies about media that we grew up with, like Devil Wears Prada. The message was, you should just be lucky to be breathing in the same room as like the important people. And I actually think that a lot of people in like my class, even in 2015, were walking out thinking, I'll just be so lucky if someone even like thinks that I'm like worthy of anything. And that's just not true. I feel like, especially now, there's so much pressure on students to be so well-rounded and have so much going on for themselves that you're probably more qualified than like any of us were at the time that we graduated. So go out there, even into internships, and just remain confident, hold on to your confidence, and know that you bring value. Even though you haven't been out in the world for 10 years, like, you bring value and you're needed, and you should always remember that. And it will help you, like, it'll help you get raises, and you can negotiate a lot easier. It'll just make your life a lot easier when you actually graduate and go get a job. Just know that no matter where you're at, like, you provide value and you should be treated and compensated fairly. So never forget that.
Thank you all. Sammy, it looks like we got a question directed to you, especially concerning entering the field of journalism. And one, just because they obviously, Husaifa, Malik knows that your first job, one of your first jobs is working Oprah Magazine. How'd you get that job? Did they look to internships that you'd had? They look at particular skills. Did you have a portfolio that you submitted, anything freelance you'd done? So a student interested in journalism and wondering how they go about entering that field.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think a lot of people look at the magazines, like the big Hearst magazines or Condé Nast or Meredith, Meredith. There's so much there, and I feel like applying looks so scary. So before that, I'd had that internship in London. So I had one internship under my belt, and then I was a part of a few organizations. So I was in Schreier, and I also was a part of Bally magazine. So that was just like really fun. It was a way for me to get clips. It's a great organization. And it's also so impressive just from like when I graduated. It looks like a real magazine. So impressed by the people who run that. So I had like a little bit going on in the way of clubs and one internship, and I applied to like all of the big Hearst magazines. My goal, honestly, was to work for 17. At that time, I was like, I'm going to work for 17. I've collected every single issue since 2004. Like, it was so unhinged. And I was so convinced that I was going to get it. And I was like, well, I mean, I guess second place would be Cosmo. Like, I'm talking like I have the choice here. So I applied to all of them, including Oprah Magazine. Like, I've always loved Oprah Mag. I've loved the people that she's brought in, like Brene Brown. And so I was like, let's do it. But I didn't end up getting called back by 17. And for like a minute, I was heartbroken. But then I was like, well, there's all these other magazines. I'm just going to wait. And so I got one call back from the web assistant there. We had a phone call, and we got along so well. I have to say, like, I think a lot of it was because our personalities really matched. And I think that really matters when you are going into like an interview, because they're also thinking like, how's it going to be working with this person? So, if you jive well, you have such a good chance. And then I got a second interview. And then I think it was like 2 weeks later, I got an email that I'd read 3 days late. And I couldn't believe I'd missed it. And I had like a full panic attack on Beaver Ave. I couldn't believe that I got it. And honestly, I still, to this day, that hiring manager, I like reach out to her at least once a year. And I'm like, hey, remember when you started my entire career and chose me? Like, thanks. So I think that a lot of it was I had something set up, and then I also just happened to jive really well with the person, and they took a chance on me. So it was a beautiful mix of things, I think.
Wow, that's a fantastic story. It's a good segue. I think this may end up being our exit question, given the amount of time. We'll see. But I was telling Lauren and everybody, all you are attending today, and thank you again for attending. I teach a class in the fall. This isn't a promo, but I'm just telling you. I was talking to Lauren before we got on here, called English 111, where again, alumni come back and share with these students about how they're able to translate their English degree into success in various careers. And I said to Lauren, I'm psyched to moderate this panel. I'll tell you why. The best presenters to class every year are those who work in marketing and communications. They just know how to do it. I mean, I never worry about that. And so Sammy was just going through her entry into the kind of journalism field. But in broader strokes, you all work in some sense in working with customer relations and marketing and communications. And so I wondered if you could, first of all, why is that? Why are you guys like the best presenters when you come back? Is it self-evident or obvious? You can go ahead and strut. I don't care, you know, if you can drive the Wienermobile, you can let it go here. But other than that, you guys are in a great position, seems to me, and you embody it in your field and your work, but how, and I thought, Sammy, you kind of modeled this a little bit in your last answer, but Casey and Whitney, you may want to jump in here. How do you, as a recent graduate or somebody who's in their senior year, they're about to go out to interview and so on, how do you market yourself as a communication arts and science major or an English major or a journaler? How do I even go about marketing myself to potential employers? What are do's and don'ts?
That's a great question, Sean. I think for me, being first gen college grad, I felt immense pressure for that because I was kind of carrying my own torch and figuring that out as I went along. So for me, again, English degree, not going into print or media communications, my messaging was hard worker, right? First gen college graduate, female, take this very seriously and very hyper focused. What it looked like in that entry level job to move or make the changes and moves that I wanted to was hard work. Again, raising my hand for all and any opportunities to grow, even if they were lateral and experience in different areas. And the bonus there is your personal growth and development, where you get a chance to experience different flavors of different roles or jobs or industries and have exposure to that. So I think kind of to what Sammy said, that, her luck was owed to it. A lot of it is a personality fit, right? Because you're going to be in some capacity working with a group or a team, or even just a manager or a director. And there needs to be some congruence with how you interact. So making sure it's the right fit for you, and just as well demonstrating, that you're willing to learn, eager, and committed to doing it.
I love that, Casey. Another thing that I found after I left Penn State was during my time as a student, there's so much emphasis on what's your major, right? And so we box ourselves into I'm this or I'm that. When you get out into the world, there's a lot less focus on what your major was in school, right? People want to know, as Sammy was talking about, what kind of person you are, what you're going to be like to work with, what you've done in the past, what you're willing to do. And so I think it's less about like, I'm, this major and I have to try to convince somebody, because at first when I was interviewing and people were like, what is CAS? But if I made that the focus of the conversation, then they were missing me, right? And so instead, if you're talking about what you've done, what you're interested in, what you do well, in addition to the degree that you did very well to deserve, I think that makes a much more well-rounded person to put forth as a candidate for a position.
That's great. Sammy, anything else to add about how folks should approach marketing themselves as a liberal arts major out there?
I loved when Whitney was talking about just telling everyone like what you want to do, because I think that is a very different conversation. And like, if you were just to say, yeah, I graduated in communications and I worked at this internship and that's it, like, here's why I'm good for this job. I think it is really smart to say, I've always had a passion in home improvement. Like, I do X, Y, and Z around my home. And I also I have regular communication with contractors and things like that. I think giving a little bit more context to yourself is so important. Because I can promise you that a big part of the process of like, should we go with this person or not, is how do we get along with this person? Like, how does this person's do they actually like this outside of work? I think it does make a difference, especially with content. So Whitney, I totally agree with you on that front. And I think that's really smart advice.
Fantastic. Thank you, all three of you. Exit question. One thing you're desperately missing about Penn State right now is?
The ice cream. Come on.
We're about to get 6 inches of snow, Sammy. You still thinking about the creamery? Oh my God. Love it. Favorite flavor, Pam?
I was gonna say the potential of a snow day, even though y'all get a lot less of them than we did when I was in school. I saw when y'all had snow like a few weeks ago, and they were like, no, go anyway. So yes, but the potential of a snow day to stay in, because now we're all virtually working. It's like, but no one cares what's going on outside.
That's so funny you say that, Whitney, because before you came on, we were telling Casey, Casey logged on first before we started, and I said, we're about to get 3 to 6 inches, and maybe they'll cancel school, but they never did that before. You could never, you never ever happened, right?
Yeah.
So the potential for a snow day. Anything you're missing, Casey, besides a potential for snow day and your favorite flavor of Berkey ice cream?
Yeah, definitely the ice cream and French dip sandwich from Cafe 210.
Oh,
Ooh.
geez, you had to say that. Now we're talking about food. I love the spirit too. I went back and like I said, I went back for homecoming and it's unmatched energy. And it also just never, I felt like I was 18 again. And I felt like I was seeing Penn State again with fresh eyes, just being downtown. So the spirit is amazing. I'll always miss that.
Well, you three embody it. Thank you so much for giving back in this wonderful way today. I don't know if you're open to any of the attendees following up with you with questions they may have, but if you are, I'm sure they'd appreciate knowing that. And Lauren, I know you want to say a few words right before we sign off. So thank you all again. This has been so much fun for me.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I very much appreciate your diverse perspectives and everything that you were talking about. As an alum myself, I love hearing from other alums about what they missed because I just came here and then never left. So, and thank you so much, Sean, for moderating this panel. This was excellent. We do have a couple of other events going on this week. So I'm just going to share my screen really quick. And it looks like it is slowly loading. There we go. So tomorrow, as long as the university is open, we are continuing on with our Career Week programming. We have our Wayfinding Wednesday. So we have Ask a Career Coach hours from 11 to 1 in the Chaikin Center. Then we're going to be hearing from a recruiter about interviewing skills at 12:30. And then every single Wednesday, we have our pop-in or drop-in career support from 1 to 4 p.m., either in 101 Sparks building or over Zoom. And then connecting it back to the communication piece, the public writing initiative on campus, they are putting together an amazing panel. I believe one of the panelists is actually from Valley Magazine and some of the other student-run sites, magazines, and newspapers at the university on how to leverage writing for your career development. So I think that this would be relevant to everyone who has attended this panel. And then on Instagram, you can follow us and we'll be talking about how to market your liberal arts degree. Then on Thursday, we're switching our focus to law and government positions. What can I do with a major in political science or international politics? How to get a job with the federal government, where we have an alum coming in and talking about who works for the General Services Administration, and we'll be giving tips and tricks on that. And then also deciding on law school, because we know that some English and CAS majors also do want to pursue law. So that could be an option for you as well to follow on Instagram. And then finally on Friday, we have another round of Asking a Career Coach. So please stop by, talk with one of us in the Chaikin Center. And we have careers and research with a bachelor's degree, and then pivoting to more for graduate students, how to turn a CV into a resume and talking about grad schools. So, and then last but not least, we have our virtual recruiting week from February 6th to the 10th, where we have, I believe, 11 different employers who have signed up for time slots during that week to have individual one-on-one conversations with students, 20-minute conversations. So unlike going to the career fair and feeling really overwhelmed and in that space, you can just book a time and talk with a recruiter from one of the employers that we have signed up, and the QR code is right there. You can just search virtual recruiting week. So with that, I will stop my share and just say thank you again to all of you, all of our panelists today. Thank you so much, Sean, again for moderating. This has been incredible. And I think we'll definitely be in contact with you all again soon. But otherwise, safe travels if you're traveling through the snow. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you all so, so much.
Thank you. And
Thank
Lauren,
you.
you're welcome to share my information, however you're going to do so. But if anyone wants to follow up, and it sounds like Casey and Sammy are saying the same thing. So however you want to share it with attendees, that's fine.
That is perfect. So I would ask any attendee here, you can shoot me an email. You can find my email information on our website. And then I'd be happy to distribute any one of the panelists' emails. So thank you so much. Also recommend connecting with them on LinkedIn too. So great. Thank you all. Have a good night.
See y'all.